Hi everybody, I'm Beebs Kelley. Welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to take a look back at one of Meghan Markle's older interviews because it serves as a great example of many of the tactics that she tends to use in her public-facing interviews, conversations, or engagements, events, whatever you want to call it. And now that Prince Harry has given yet another interview, we've begun to see a lot of parallels of him implementing very similar tactics. Way back in 2021, Meghan Markle went on The Ellen Show when that was still a thing. And this was just a few months after she and Harold lied all over Oprah. And in this interview, we can see several things that she does that actually end up undermining her messaging and her presence in general on this show. These particular clips are rich with examples of flakiness and manipulation, especially looking back years later at promises she did not deliver on. There is another abandoned cause featured in this interview, which, much like many of her ventures, has been completely left by the wayside since this occurred. But first, let's start with her outfit. She's got this sort of voluminous shirt with very big sleeves that have these cutouts all throughout and black trousers. They look like they're maybe mid-rise to slight high-rise trousers, but on her, they look quite high-rise. The way that they styled her for this, though, with the shirt pulled out just a bit, giving just a little bit of a billow to it, is helping to create the illusion of a more well-defined waistline. So that is a positive, though it could have been more effective with a slightly lower rise trouser and less poofy sleeves, because the poofy sleeves themselves are just a little bit overwhelming here. The trousers are not dragging on the floor, so that's a big positive. The neckline is probably the best part of this whole look for her. It draws the eye right up here to the collar of the shirt where it's got just some nice little pleats. So that's creating a focal point here in the center near her face, which is a good tactic for TV, but also it's not accentuating the shoulder line any. It's drawing the eye here instead. Since she is seated for the vast majority of this interview, the big roomy sleeves with these cutouts tend to look a little bit messy, kind of like Edward Scissorhands was responsible for doing the laundry or something. It just looks a little tacky and sloppy. Because they have volume and these cutouts, the sleeves are very stimulating, and they're just kind of flapping about when she motions her hands, and it kind of exaggerates her hand gestures, which you'll notice play a big role in her interview here. And then on top of it, she has her hair down in this way that's creating a little bit of a crowded feeling here because your eye is drawn to the collar of the neckline. And then she's got her hair down that's closing in her face and covering up these shoulder areas. It's really, really a little bit claustrophobic here, plus the big sleeves. It would have been a lot more successful with perhaps an updo or a half back or maybe just a slightly different hairstyle in general. I don't know. This is just a little too crowded. So this outfit overall, it's not the worst, but it definitely could have been improved in some ways. But in general, I would say that this is a better style of outfit than a lot of the things we've seen. I think that a bit of color would have been really nice for her as well here. Maybe like a jewel toned, like an eggplant or a teal, even a pastel green might have been a nice choice for a blouse, and just a slightly different style of blouse. Something with a flowier fabric and not all these cutouts in them. Something a little bit less exaggerated for the blouse itself would have been nice. Another note about the hair, I do wish she had opened up her face a tad bit more, because when she wears her hair like this, I'm noticing it doesn't just close in the area, it also really accentuates the width of her jawline. She has sort of a diamond-shaped face where it's a little bit wider at the jaw, not necessarily the chin, but like around this area here of the jaw is the wider point of her face. So pulling the hair back a little bit or creating some sort of different focal point might have been nice, because this, I'm just noticing, feels really, really heavy right here, and it's really kind of widening that or drawing the eye in there. It's closing in everywhere else. I don't know, I just don't love the way the hair looks for this. So the interview itself started by focusing a lot more on her acting career, which, let's be clear here, was not very impressive. The market when it comes to casting is way oversaturated. There are so many people wanting to be actors, going around to auditions all the time. So to be fair, anybody who actually does land a role on a TV show, a recurring role, and stays with them for several seasons is getting a degree of success, quite a bit more success than all the other actors who never get a role with lines, who are just extras all the time. So, I mean, that is success in and of itself, getting onto a TV show and being a recurring character in that show for several seasons. That is a degree of success. However, That is a lot more like a normal working actor sort of job. It's not movie star level. It's not the lead role in the TV show where they're really carrying the whole series, the main characters of the series. It's mid to low level when it comes to acting jobs when you have a position or a role the way Meghan did. Typically, for somebody who lands a role the way Meg did, where she was 6th or 7th on the call sheet, you would be hoping that that catapults you into bigger roles. But she just didn't have the chops for it. She never got cast in a bigger TV show. Her role didn't really elevate throughout the series to where she became a more prominent character. It kind of stayed the same. And she didn't get picked up for movies either. And there's lots of little short tidbits of old social media posts or old little short interviews, sort of like brand deal type spots where she was like plugging Bobbi Brown cosmetics, things like that, where she was going around to auditions for movies. So she was trying to get movie roles, film roles. She was trying to follow that trajectory into creating a bigger acting career for herself to become a bigger actress. However, she's just not a great actor, and so she wasn't ever picked up on films. If she was a good actor and people saw that on Suits and everybody involved saw that she has something special here, she could be really successful in movies, in film, then she would have gotten there. But since she wasn't, her acting career was not particularly notable. Not saying that it wasn't successful in general or that it wasn't a good success for her personally. Just when it comes to acting, it's not like it was an impressive run. So that in and of itself seemed a little bit out of place, talking so much about her acting days at the beginning of this interview when they were a little bit underwhelming. Anywho, the interview was meant to redirect the narrative at this time towards Meghan's acting, which was supposed to divert attention away from the poorly received Oprah interview and also, at least in Meghan's mind, try to signal to Hollywood. Because she was, at this particular stage, trying to develop connections within Hollywood. The plan for Harry and Meghan at this particular stage, according to all the sources closest to the Sussexes who were leaking things at the time, aka Camp Sussex, putting things out in the media, she was trying to get in to lead acting roles. This was just before the rumors came about that she wanted to resurrect the Bodyguard films with Kevin Costner, that she wanted to be the lead in that and stuff like that. So she was definitely pushing for this sort of Hollywood angle in this particular interview. And here is the start of the interview here. We cannot even get a minute in before she's annoying people. Right after she sits down, she does this particular maneuver, which we have seen her do a lot, especially during her early days with her involvement with the royal family. It does come across as fake or trying too hard or, ironically, bad acting, which is a theme that has remained consistent with Meghan Markle, both in this interview and just in general. She does look like she is acting much of the time. People don't want to see you pretending. It's off-putting in real life. For example, the way she holds her hand in front of her face here while she's giggling, she does this a lot. This is one of her go-tos, bringing her hand up kind of to her nose and letting out some sort of a giggle or a smile. And it reads like she's covering her smile, like she's hiding her smile, which to us a lot of the times reads as fake. Like you're faking your smile and you're kind of hiding it because you don't want it to be known that it's a fake smile and not genuine smiling. That's how it reads for a lot of people, but leave your opinion in the comments. When you have good rapport with someone, you are genuinely laughing and smiling along during a conversation or whatever, or they actually make you laugh, there's trust between you, or just good chemistry between you. When they actually do make you laugh, you tend to actually open up your body language a lot more. You open yourself to them because they have just made you happy. You are delighted in that moment. Things like this sort of a picture, throwing your head back while you're laughing, you open yourself up more. But she's using blocking gestures here by hiding her smile and bringing her hands up in front of herself while she's laughing and smiling. That's part of why it reads a little bit off. For an interview designed to make her more relatable, I do not think that an acting career angle was necessarily the right approach, but we'll circle back to that later. So next, the interview evolved to discussing what was meant to seem like humble beginnings. It was a sad attempt to come across as relatable here, or as somebody who doesn't take herself too seriously. That was another big theme of this interview, was Meghan trying to convey that she is not taking herself seriously. There was this awkward skit, we'll get to that later. But Meg's approach to this is to give stories from her past, childhood, acting days, things like that, older stories from her life. But each of these attempts and these stories really fall flat, to the point where by the end of this interview, the audience is hardly reacting or responding to her stories at all. See if you can spot the mistakes that she makes that tend to repel the audience or disconnect them from her story, preventing that relatability from coming through. In a somewhat abrupt move, Ellen opens into this story, there's no good segue into it, about Meghan Markle's car. She said that she had to climb in through the back because the door didn't work, and she's laughing at this story so much. Meghan is laughing at this story so much that it makes me think that she thought it would make the audience laugh, that it would be a good opener. But it's just not that funny of a story. It's really bland, and her amusement with it and with telling this story isn't helping anything either. It instead comes across as really self-indulgent, especially with the awkward initiation of the story. It's not an organic anecdote. I'll spare you some of these segments because they are just really hard to watch, but she seems so tickled at the fact that her car driver's side door didn't work and she had to climb through. She's laughing at it constantly, and she keeps gesturing to the audience like this, kind of, while she nods and she's giggling and smiling, hoping the audience is going to find this funny too. Which we could take away two different things. Either Meghan is that out of touch that she actually thinks that that's funny, in which case she has a horrible sense of humor, or that she's just trying really hard to build a rapport and get people on her side, sort of. And it's that almost manipulative feeling of like using the words right and stuff at the end of a sentence where you're wanting people to come to you and agree with you. Now, this can be a useful tactic when you're giving a speech or something like that, but your words need to match it. It needs to actually be something that people can come together for and join in on, whether it's something that's actually funny, actually relatable, or actually meaningful. Neither of those really work in this situation, so it fell really flat. It's not funny. And with Meghan laughing so much and so fakely at her own stories, and the crowd we can hear is not laughing with her, even Ellen looks like she's having a hard time looking amused.
I know, it was not ideal.
Did anyone ever see, I know you parked far away, but did anyone ever see you climb through a trunk?
No, I would play it off. I would go like, oh, I'm just looking for my resume and my highlighters for my script. Oh, maybe it's back there. And then crawl.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh God.
The things we do.
That's, we met, God, I don't know how many years ago how long ago was that?
A long time ago, well before I was even on Suits, I think.
So as you can see here, this is what I mean by Meghan coming across as entirely too entertained with herself. And as you know, I do like to give the benefit of the doubt. I'm not just going to assume the worst in situations, but this really is awkward and cringy. It's hard to watch this whole thing. There is a strong feeling that she is trying really, really hard to build this rapport, so much so that it seems forced with the crowd and thus with all the viewers, but also with Ellen. They seem a little bit out of sync throughout this.
Over a decade ago, maybe, right? But we met at a pet shop.
Yes.
And I was going there to rescue a dog, and it was right around Christmas time, and you would come in at the same time, and you just looked at me and said, are you getting that dog? Get that dog. You have to take that dog home. I was like, well, if Ellen said I have to take the dog home, I'm getting this dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't even, obviously I didn't know who you were. I just love people rescuing pets. So as soon as you were holding the dog, I was like, take it.
Take it. And I said, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I listen.
I love that. Obviously we are neighbors, so we see each other a lot.
Yeah.
And I love that y'all moved here, and Harry is loving it, right?
He loves it.
What's he love so much about California?
Well, we moved here during lockdown. I mean, exactly when things shut down. So we've just been able to spend a lot of time at home and creating our home. But I think it's just the lifestyle, and, you know, the weather's pretty great. But we're just happy.
Yeah.
Meghan is implying a much closer relationship with Ellen than Ellen is with Meghan. Meghan even says something like Auntie Ellen in one part, for example. And to be fair, she was trying to be funny. She thought that it would be funny. It's not funny.
Married for 3 years, but when y'all were dating, you had to really keep it quiet. And,
Yes.
And you got to go to a Halloween party.
We did. He came to see me in Toronto, and our friends and his cousin Eugenie, and now her husband Jack, they came as well. And the four of us snuck out in Halloween costumes to just have one fun night on the town. before it was out in the world that we were a couple.
So you went with Harry to a Halloween party and they had no idea it was the two of you?
No, it was a post-apocalypse theme. So we had all of this very bizarre costuming on, and we were able to just sort of have one final fun night out.
It all feels very forced. And this is the segment where we can hear the quote, "One child is a hobby and two is parenting." And the internet would have you believe that Meghan just says this as her idea to parenting. But what she actually says is that someone told us that having one child is a hobby, two is parenting. Okay, but do we believe that? A lot of people credit Meghan for this quote. They're not saying she said somebody told her this. People, just the general consensus is Meghan said. And I think the reason why people say that is because it's not a common phrase that I have ever heard before. The belief here is that Meghan thought it would be a good line. So she said someone told her it, but really that never happened. This is just something she came up with and wanted to find an organic way to put it in this interview. And so she thought saying somebody told her that is a good idea. I don't think it was a good idea. It once again fell really flat. But next she launches into this discussion of selling scrunchies in elementary school, and something that Meghan does a lot in conversation, once again, seemingly to try to build rapport with the person, but it just doesn't work, is she uses things like what in an asking thing before she says a specific, and she uses right at the end. So she'll make a statement and be like, right, which is trying to create this vibe that everybody agrees with her, because how could you not? Or she does it like this here. In this example, she says, I was in elementary school, so I was what? Like 9, right? How the heck would Ellen know how old you were when you were selling scrunchies? How weird. You would do something like that with your parent or your sibling if you were trying to remember the year you participated in, won a soccer tournament. You were like, was I what, 9, 10? And then your mom or your sibling or somebody would be like, you were 9. It was 4th grade. You know, you're trying to recall the age with other people who have the knowledge to help you recall the specific age. Not a rando like Ellen, who actually doesn't seem to know Meghan well at all. How would Meghan know how old you were? So it was really weird that she did that tactic here of being like, what, like 9 to Ellen? So strange. It maketh no sense. And that's why it doesn't work in this setting. All this does is show the audience that this is overly prepared and she's trying to make it seem off the cuff. And when you're not a very good actor and trying to pretend that it's not prepared, your answers, then you make silly mistakes like this. You throw in something that doesn't fit because you're not good at improv.
We kept saying this Halloween, we were like, this is your chance. You can go out. You can get dressed up and actually go out. But y'all chose to stay home this year.
We were home and we saw you guys, which was great. But no, we wanted to do something fun for the kids. And then the kids were just not into it at all. Archie was a dinosaur for maybe 5 minutes.
Not even 5 minutes.
Not even 5 minutes.
Finally, Harry talked him into putting the head on. But Lily was a skunk.
She was a little skunk.
It was so cute.
I know, like Flower from Bambi. We just
But Lily is now teething, so you didn't sleep last night.
Next, Ellen graciously leads the Meg into talking about paid family leave. And Meghan makes good points about the subject, but she punctuates it with, I will do everything I can to make sure we can implement that for people, meaning better paid family leave, like a federal family leave program. Well, it's been 3 years since this interview, and we've heard literally nothing else on this issue since, like at all, nothing. So it's another empty promise. Big mistake if you're gonna say and declare that you're gonna do everything you can to make something happen on a TV show like this, where people can look back on it and be like, dang, it's been 3 years and she hasn't done anything. She hasn't even talked about it once since then, as far as I know. Has she talked about it since then? Leave it in the comments. And if you can, put a link so that I can see, and I will update this video. But I don't think she said another word about paid family leave since this day. And this is one of those tactics that we have seen from Meghan and Harry a lot. They use talking points like this one, things that are really softball, that they think everybody can get behind, that will garner them approval of some kind. But they're only using these talking points. They're not actually behind them or championing the cause or trying to get progress on these. They're literally using the talking points to try to get people to like them or get approval or try to seem like they're on a certain side of the issues or whatever. It's disappointing, but also it's in stark contrast to the royal family. For example, the Early Years Project, Earthshot, Homewards, the Royal Foundation's causes that are actually continuously making progress and doing things. And the reason why I mention that here is because Harry and Meghan did position themselves as people who were going to continue this sort of work, where they were going to continue to try to make progress on certain issues. And then they do things like this where they mention the certain issues or they talk about these causes and use these talking points, but they're never actually doing anything behind it. And this just highlights that. But let's take a look at this next clip of the interview.
Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex. Tell everybody about the book and why you decided to write this.
You know, I wrote this originally just as a poem for my husband on Father's Day, and it was about my observation of him and, you know, him being a dad, which was the most beautiful thing to watch. And that was really the intention of it. And then once it was shared with a couple of friends and people that we were close with, they said, no, this resonates for me too, because it feels really inclusive and there's representation. And it's just like a sweet love story between a family. And so I said, okay, well, let's turn it into a children's book. And then made sure that all of those pieces of it, especially the softer side of masculinity, the softer side of fatherhood, to be able to see that, and try to include it all in there and make sure everyone felt like they could see themselves in these pages. Because I remember as a little girl, you can always see someone that looked like you. And I thought that was really important to have everyone's story feel like it was unfolding on those pages for them.
It's really sweet. And then does Archie know he's in here? Does he know that's him? And what does he think of the book?
He does. On that first page that you open and you see our dogs, he goes, that's Pula, that's Guy. And my dog Guy, his name is that because I'd gotten him from a shelter years ago and he was so tiny, his name was just the little guy. And I was like, we'll just call you Guy. So Archie gets very excited to see the dogs and to see his chickens also in there.
Okay, so in this segment, we hear a lot about the bench again. And I found it to be, as somebody who reads lots and lots, like thousands of children's books all the time, the bench was just not great. I flipped through it at the library one day and I read it and I didn't even bother checking it out because I knew that it would not hold the attention of children. It's just not great. It doesn't have good flow. I can do a review on it sometime if you want. Leave it in the comments section and click the like button. Click the subscribe button if you haven't already, and let me know if you want me to review The Bench in its own video, and I will do it. But anyway, next she moves into talking about another one of her school assignments. If you recall, the dish soap story is actually a school assignment. It was a school assignment that was very, very common across the United States. I can't speak for other places, but this is something that I've had people tell me that they did the exact same thing in their class, even before Meghan Markle time frame of when she talks about it. So this was a pretty standard school assignment. This was not unique. So the dish soap story was actually a school assignment. And here she has another school assignment.
You wrote another book when you were younger. And yeah. And then let's show the picture you drew of yourself in the book.
It was a school assignment.
What was it called? The Girl Without Freckles?
A Face Without Freckles is a Night Without Stars. That was my self-illustration.
Did you?
Yes.
You drew that.
You say that like that's impressive. That's a terrible little drawing.
I couldn't draw that.
Oh, yeah, I do that.
And then based on your hair, let's talk about your hair.
Well, this is what I looked like. So this was around, I was 10 or 11 maybe. And the reason my hair looked like that then is because I was obsessed with Andie MacDowell in 4 Weddings and a Funeral. And all I wanted was that perfect little curly haircut. So I asked my mom, went to the hairdresser and got it. And on that first day, I was like, this is amazing. I look like Andie MacDowell.
Let's do the first day first.
In 4 Weddings and a Funeral.
Yes.
And then it was as though everyone forgot to tell me, you have ethnic hair. You are not going to look like Andie MacDowell in 4 Weddings and a Funeral. And that's what it ended up evolving into. And I'd go to school and they said I looked like Krusty the Clown from The Simpsons.
No.
It was a real bummer. But yeah, and I've got a whole vibe happening there too.
Wow. Yeah. No, you look like you're embracing it.
Now, this is a picture of the assignment here. And there's like an entire theory online that this is something Meghan just whipped up now. And she just tried to make the drawing look like a child did it. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section. But going off the basis that this was an actual assignment that she had saved and brought in to show Ellen, that alone I think is just kind of weird. To have something from your childhood school assignment on a talk show like this, it just seems a bit odd. I'm not sure how this fits in with anything. I don't know. Anyway, she segues this into her childhood haircut for some reason. And once again, it is not an entertaining or cute story, really. It's just blah. It's bland. It's kind of boring. It's just, what is this? But yet, she is giggling away and laughing like it's the most amusing and hilarious material she has ever told. It's not gregarious or charismatic. It's self-indulgent. It lacks self-awareness to understand that these stories are not interesting, they're not entertaining, they're not endearing. Generally speaking, the closest I've seen to this with other celebrities who are arguably more likable or more successful or whatever is if it pertains to something they're doing now, like their actual career. So for example, if there is an actor in a superhero movie and they used to dress up like that superhero when they're a kid, they might bring a picture of that because it's kind of funny and cute, and it's like, wow, there's a connection. When they were a child, they dressed up as this superhero, and now here they are as an adult being that superhero in this movie in real life. Cute, cool, interesting. There's connections to present day. Kind of fun. Or an actor showing a clip of something they did when they were a child, like they were on some sort of school play or some sort of program or something, or on a TV show as a kid, and it was kind of embarrassing, kind of cringe, kind of silly. Or people's first acting jobs. Actors share those types of things on these talk shows all the time because it is kind of endearing and it shows people where they started and how they are now and that evolution. And it can be inspiring to people who are still going around in the early stages trying to get roles or things like that. Whatever. There are connections and it makes sense. This has zero connections to what Meghan's doing now, or what she was doing then when this interview happened. There are no connections tying it to anything, and that's part of why it just feels so bizarre. Next, an awkward moment happens. The Meg brings up dancing, and she's talking to Ellen's DJ at the time, Twitch, about it, and then he tries to say something, and Meghan interrupts him because she is eager to say that she loves to dance, and then Ellen strangely says, "You are a good dancer," like twice. Which I think no one believes because even the crowd is absolute crickets. There is zero reaction during this entire segment. What purpose did it serve? It's so strange and out of place to just be like, oh yeah, and by the way, you are a good dancer. I'm not sure what's happening here. All right, so let's break down the self-sabotaging tactics that Meghan has used in this interview, and you will recognize these from lots of other experiences that you have seen Meghan in. False rapport. On Ellen, that came in the form of looking to the audience with the open arm gestures and laughing too much, and also by pretending she's besties with Ellen. Like she has this long history with her and a deeper relationship. They come across as acquaintances, like their vibe together seems like they're acquaintances. So Meg acting like they're such close friends actually stands out as really misplaced and a bit weird. And it disrupted the flow of the interview a little bit because they were just taking slightly different approaches. Meghan wanted to take this "I'm your absolute best friend" vibe, and Ellen was being a little bit more normal and had a little bit more of a boundary or a bubble around her, and that really did stand out because Meghan was not following that lead and letting things be the way they genuinely truly are. But other examples of Meghan using this false rapport approach include things like hugging people, insisting on hugging strangers sometimes, being overly giggly and smiley, the frozen smile, to name just a few. It's quite common with people higher in narcissism because they have learned, or just this pattern of behavior, that if they act way too over the top, friendly and warm with people, then sometimes they can get more out of that person. Next, we see this self-indulgent pattern. Overly amused with yourself and your stories like they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. It's just not a good way to try to connect with people. It comes across very much as being full of yourself, not being self-aware enough to understand these stories are not important or entertaining. At the end of the day, those sorts of things just come across as really self-centered, and all of us have dealt with people who are maybe a little bit self-centered in real life. They're not necessarily the funnest to talk to or be around, so it doesn't read well when she does these types of things in interviews of all places where it comes across even more self-indulgent. Now, if the stories that she told did have connection to things she was doing now and did have other things backing them up and kind of bringing them into the moment, making them more interesting for the viewer, it would make more sense and it would be better. But since they're all just random stories about her as a person and her past, her childhood, that have no connection to today, and they're very, very bland. There's nothing special about school assignments and haircuts as a child. We've all had them. We've all had good ones and bad ones. Like, all of this kind of just fell flat because there was no connection. If she had focused the interview on other things she's doing now, or things that were a little bit more relatable and less just about her while also being kind of boring and bland, I think it would have gone better. Another tactic is acting. Overacting, bad acting, whichever way you want to look at it. Body language not always matching up with what you're saying is something that we pick up on. It comes across as fake. Here's the thing. If you are being genuine, if you are just being honest and genuine and all of that aligns, your body language and your words are going to flow together nicely, even if you're nervous. People generally pick up on that. But if you're not, people pick up on that too. And they can tell, and they do notice, and it discredits you immediately, and it's just not very likable. A fourth way that she undermined her presence here in this interview and the goals that she had, which were to come across as more likable and relatable, and also hint at Hollywood that she is an actor, was the narratives. Everything came across as rehearsed talking points, but it was also really, really scattered. Why do we have random bits about dancing thrown in here, mixed in with acting and childhood and paid leave? It's just all over the place, which made it seem like she had a checklist, an agenda, and simply put, it was overdone, like lots of the things we've seen. Overworked narratives, overdone things that are just kind of overthought and end up getting cluttered. But what tactics did you notice stand out in this interview? If you really want to torture yourself, you can go back and watch the skit that they did together. It was horrible. It was horrendous in every way. I will link it in the description box for you if you would like to watch it, or if you'd like to watch the complete interview. I don't necessarily recommend it because it is quite annoying to watch. But once again, throughout the whole thing, after the skit, when she kind of rejoined and they finished up her interview, she's the only one laughing once again. If you do go back and watch the full interview or the skit, be sure to come back here and leave in the comments your thoughts. I so appreciate you joining me for today's bonus video. I hope it was at least somewhat fun and entertaining to watch today, and I will see you next time. Have a happy day, everybody. Bye.